So, welcome to Conversations. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the Indian economy and the Indian economy, how wonderfully well it has done, especially in this quarter. And going forward, we will discuss what are the challenges that it faces, especially in the coming year, but more importantly, how well it has done this year. So, this is what here's the basic data. For those of you who are still joining conversations, welcome to Conversations. I'm Muqtadar Khan, your host, and today I'm going to talk to you about India's economy in the fourth quarter, which is India's from January to March of 2025. India showed a spectacular growth rate of 7.4%, which is just stunning. And for the whole year, which is 24-25, which means from April of 2024 till the March of 2025, India has recorded a growth rate of 6.5%. So that is this is part of India's growth story. India continues to show a resilient economy that grows in spite of adversity, while other countries have shown decline, significant decline in their growth rates. We are seeing, of course, I spoke to you recently about the decline of Japan, and Japan has been declining since I think since the 1990s, and also some of the European countries. I will show you the data even today, but I also want to talk to you about some of the details of India's growth rate. And so for those of you who are new to Conversations, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. But here is what I wanted to say to you, that a couple of days ago I did a show based on some of the stories that were being published in the Indian media, arguing that India had become the fourth biggest economy in the world on the basis of GDP, overtaking Japan. And the data that we had shared was that India was $4.187 trillion and Japan was $4.186 trillion. But the answer is this, that is actually not fully accurate. India's GDP at the end of March 2025 is $3.9 trillion. So technically, in the financial year 24-25, India did not cross the $4 trillion mark. The data that everybody is talking about, and which I also did, is the IMF forecast for 2025, which means that by the end of this year, by December, that is their forecast, that Japan will become 4.186 and India will become 4.187. So as of now, as of March 2025, Japan is at $4.07 trillion and India is at $3.9 trillion. So India is still technically the fifth biggest economy. But nevertheless, if you look at some of the data that I'm going to share with you, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try today and also finish my presentation in the next 15 minutes. I want all of you to watch this because I'm going to show you a lot of charts and a lot of graphs, and there will be a lot of data about India's growth, about various sectors, etc. So it is, if you are listening and if you can switch to the video, then please do, because I will be showing you some charts beginning now. So I'm going to ask Scorpion, since you came first, to let me know if you are able to see this data or not. Where is it? Even I'm not able to find it. It has to be here. Yep. So tell me, able to see this particular chart? I can see it here, but are you able to see? It says India records. This is the thumbnail. So let me know if you can see the thumbnail. Yes, Rohit, welcome. Thank you very much. All right, so I'm going to share this data with you now. So this is the first chart that I'm showing you is the gross domestic product GDP of BRIC countries from 2024. So if you look at the BRIC countries, the China is at 18.74 trillion dollars, followed by India at 3.9 trillion dollars, Brazil at 2.17, Russia at 2.16, and South Africa at 4.09. Uh, so if you look here, if you see the official GDP of the official GDP of India is at 3.9. But if you look at the growth rates so here I have the growth rates for the BRIC, sorry, let me get you the growth rates of the BRIC countries. So if you look at the growth rates of big countries, you will find that the growth rates of big countries are 5.0 for China, 6.46, that is what, 6.5 for India. Brazil is at 3.4, Russia at 4.1, South Africa at 0.6. So India's fourth quarter GDP growth was at 7.4%, which was very fast. But India's annual GDP growth, that is from April of 2024 till March of 2025, was 6.5%. So if you look at the BRICS, you can clearly see that India is the fastest growing BRIC economy. That is why there is so much of buzz about it. What is interesting is that China has slowed down. One of the things that we don't often say this, that is probably because of the current political environment in India, that actually India has been one of the top two fastest growing economies, major economies for more than 20 years. So for a long time, India was two and China was one in terms of growth rates in this entire 21st century. And then subsequently, India has overtaken. So China is growing at 5%, which is actually very good. It was less than 5% last year. And India is growing at 6.5%, and you can see the others. The most surprising data here is actually Russia's data, which I'm very surprised at 4.1%, in spite of the war and all the sanctions that it has faced. So now if you look at the GDP of G7 countries, you can see that Canada is at 2 trillion, France is at 3, Germany is 4.7, Italy is 2.3, here's Japan 4.07. That's why Japan, at least at the end of the 2024 year, is still the fourth biggest economy. UK is 3.59. It is clearly $300 billion behind, and the US is 29.17. And if you look at the growth rates, this is where it's important. If you look at the growth rates, Canada is 1.3, France is 1.1, Germany is nearly 0%, 0.01%. So no GDP growth. And if Germany has one more year like this, India will surely catch up by 2027. Italy is again less than 1%. Japan, that's why Japan is falling behind. You can see its growth rate is 1/3%. UK has done okay, 1.08%. And of course, the number for the United States is spectacular. For those of you who are like Scorpion made a comment at the beginning of this presentation that now that India is growing at 7.4%, are Indian Americans going to return to India? Well, I just wanted to share this particular data for you. So if you look at this BRICS growth rates, so China's growth rate is just 5% and India's is 6.46%. But in absolute dollar numbers, if you look, China has grown by $881 billion. At 5%, it is growing. It has added $880 billion to its GDP, whereas India at 6.5% has added only $231 billion, which means that the gap is not narrowing. The gap is actually increasing. And at roughly 2.9% that the United States had you could say on $30 trillion, the US would also have added about $700 billion to its economy. So just because you have higher growth rates, it doesn't mean you're catching up with another economy or overtaking it, because the base is quite small. India's current base is less than $4 trillion, whereas China is working with $17 trillion. That's what it was last year. So it has grown by 881%. So I want to show you another important uh, chart so that you understand the perspective. And in this chart that I'm sharing with you, this is India's GDP growth rate for the last 10 years, from 2014 till now. And in this, you can see that this is 9, and so these two are good years that India had, 17 and 16. So India's GDP was about 7 plus, around 8% in these 2 years. But then if you look at the COVID, this is about 6% drop. This was a huge. The global economy dropped by 3%, India dropped by close to 6%. And so there was a rebound. And so if you notice, for 2 years, which is 22 and 23, 24, 2022 and 2024, India had GDP growth rates of more than 9%. So last year it was 9.2%. Before that it was around 7%. And then before that also around 9.3 or 9.4%. And so what has happened this year is India has dropped from 9.2 to 6.5% growth. So there's a steep decline in India's growth rate. And so there is not much discussion going on in the media, just because of the idea that India is still the fastest growing economy. We are not talking about the slowing down of the Indian economy. It's gone from growing at 9% last year to 6.5% this year, and the headwinds, which means the economic challenges for India's growth next year, primarily because of the tariff-related uncertainty that Donald Trump has created in the global market, is also creating upheaval in domestic markets, etc. And that is why you see this problematic data. That we must keep in mind that India is the fastest growing economy, but it is also the fastest slowing major economy. It's dropped from 9 point something to 6.5. So I'm going to share some more data with you. This is the real GDP sector wise. So India's overall GDP growth, as you can see here in the green bar, was 6.5% growth rate. And then if you look at this orange bar, which is agriculture, and in the agriculture growth, India's growth rate was 3.8%. Apparently 3.8% is very good, because for many, many years, India has been averaging 3.2% as a growth rate. And so having a 3.8% growth is considered above average. So kudos to the agricultural sector. What you see in the blue one is the manufacturing, and the manufacturing is 5.4. Now that is not good if India wants to become a manufacturing alternative to China. And so what it shows that with all the talk of offshoring, friendshoring, restructuring, deglobalization, delinking with China, etc., in spite of that, the manufacturing growth in India is tepid. India is growing at 6.5%, but the India's manufacturing sector is growing at 5.4%. So in around 2014-15, India's GDP share of manufacturing was around 17%. And because there has been growth in the service sector, especially the IT sector, significantly in the past 10 years, the GDP share of manufacturing in India has actually dropped to less than 16%. So manufacturing is not growing in India. Agriculture is doing well. So the orange bar is good. The blue bar is not good. Services continues to perform for India, 7.2%. So that is good. And this is construction, this purple thing. So in the fourth quarter, from January to March, India invested a lot in basically infrastructure, construction-related projects. So it was 10.8% growth. So the overall growth of India in the whole 24 to 25 year, that is from April of 24 to March of 2025, the growth in construction was close to 9%. So that is a big jump, if you may. And so let me go to the next graph that I want to share is this one. But not everything is hunky-dory in the Indian economy. It is growing, and it is the fastest growing major economy in the world. It is on the verge of overtaking Japan. It is inevitable before the end of this year, India will overtake Japan. Japan is growing at 0.3%. India is growing over 6%. India should catch up if it has not already caught up. Maybe when we look at the data at the end of the second quarter of this year, which will be end of June, it's quite possible India may have overtaken Japan by then. You saw that there was a massive exports of iPhones out of India in the last couple of months because Apple was trying to beat the tariff deadlines imposed by Donald Trump. So we might see a huge surge in exports for India, and that will contribute to GDP. But unemployment seems to be really terrible in India, and I wanted to share that with you. So if you look at the green bar, this is all adults. Unemployment in India is about 4.5% unemployment. But you must keep in mind that India is the only country in the world, believe it or not, India is the only country in the world where unemployment rates, where people who don't get paid are still considered employed. So if you are, I don't know, if you are just helping your father with his PowerPoint presentations, it's like, let's say that I'm a YouTuber and my daughter helps me with my PowerPoint occasionally, then she's considered as employed, even though I don't pay her anything to do that. She doesn't. She's, alhamdulillah, employed and doing very well. But I'm giving an example. So only in India do we consider. So India's unemployment rate is artificially reduced. Please keep that in mind. So when you look at this figure of all green, it says 4.5%, but it should be much more than that because it includes lots of people who are not paid. The youth unemployment in India is at the moment a little more than 10%, but the educated youth and unemployment is really, really scary, which is above 18%. So if you are educated and if you are young, if you are between the ages of 15 and 45, and you are educated, which means you have a college degree or you've been to college, then you are employed. 1 out of 5 are unemployed. And if you go to the urbans, if you don't look at the rural side, if you look at only urban youth, then the unemployment rate even climbs all the way up to 29%, I think. The uneducated youth, they have jobs and their unemployment rate is below 4. So the explanation for this, I interviewed the economist Santosh Mehrotra. His analysis of the Indian economy. I will be sharing that video on my India channel in an hour or so. For those of you who can access my India channel, it's called Conversations 2025. You will see that, and if you understand Hindi, he spoke in Hindi. He explained this by saying that unemployed youth have no choice. They come from poor families, uneducated youth, so they'll take whatever job they get. Whereas educated youth, because they come from middle class families, they are selective. So they will not take any job. And so they often, if you are an MS in computer science and you're not getting a job, you're not going to take any job. So that's why educated youth are have a higher rate of unemployment than uneducated youth. And these are the urban and rural, and women are also less employed than men. So this is one big challenge that India really faces. Now, this data that you are seeing here is India's trade metrics for this year. So total exports of India were $800 billion plus. total imports were nearly $9.8 billion, $980 billion. So India's trade imbalance is still negative, that you can see in blue, which means India is a net importing country. It imports more than it exports. Now, what is interesting is that the trade balance of India has reduced. And the reason why the trade balance of India has reduced is because the value of Indian rupee vis-a-vis the dollar went down. So imports became more expensive because dollar became very strong. It's still above 85 rupees per dollar. So people have imported less this year, and therefore the trade imbalance became a little less. And there was a decline in demand for luxury goods. Plus, India also taxes luxury goods which are imported or has a higher rate of tariffs for them. And so it kind of suppressed the demand for foreign goods, and therefore the thing has depressed. The hope is that in this year, India's exports will climb all the way up to $1 trillion. By the way, in the year 2024-25, India's total foreign direct investments crossed $1 trillion, but that is lifetime investments. So these are the goods exports, which are about 420. These are goods imports. So this is where India has a deficit. India is importing more manufactured stuff than it is exporting, but this is the services part. Services, India's exports are about 3.8, and it the services are $100 billion. Service exports are $100 billion more than service imports. So in that sense, it's good news that India is, in terms of services, it has a $100 billion surplus, but in terms of goods, it has a $235 billion deficit, and so the overall deficit comes to about 135. So this is some of the data that I wanted to share with you, that India's GDP has grown at the rate of 6.5%, but unemployment continues to be a major problem for India. But India's growth has declined significantly. It has dropped from 9.2% growth in 2024 to 6.5 now. There is not much explanation as to why that has happened. But the reason why India has done well so far is because of, I think, the growth in services and construction that has happened at home. So basically, government spending has been very high. India's consumer demand remains low still. So that is where India is. It is still the fastest growing economy in the world. That tells you how much challenges that other countries are facing. But let me also alert you to the fact that when you see developed economies having growth rates of 1-2%, don't scoff at that, because you're not looking at the quality of life there. As India will become richer and richer country, as India's per capita GDP goes up, it is right now at $2,800, $2.8K. So as India's GDP goes up and up, its growth rates will also begin to go down, like China's. China was growing at 9% in the 1990s until recently, and now that it has become like a high income economy at 13,000 per capita is the GDP of China. That is, growth rates have gone to 5%, and when China becomes at 20,000 per capita GDP, its growth rates probably will be around 3, and so on and so forth, like the US. So in that sense, 2024 for the US was quite spectacular with 2.9% growth or whatever, high to 2%. It is very rare. As you can look at, Germany is 0.01.